Week 5 of the 2022 college football season is wrapped up, and today, as we begin to look forward to Week 6, I'll be giving you guys my updated college football rankings for this 2022 season. And Week 5, no doubt the most active week of the season so far. We saw some major matchups in Week 5, a few massive upsets as well. That'll definitely shake things up as we head into Week 6. That said, I'll be giving you guys my updated rankings here today. Let's get started with 1 through 7. And number 1 this week remains Ohio State. Ohio State beat Rutgers 49-10 in their Week 5 matchup. And quite honestly, I mean, it's been this way the entire season. The top 3 between Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia, I mean, those 3 teams are far and away the best teams in the nation right now. And Ohio State, I got them at number 1 mainly because obviously they've been solid this entire season so far. They're 5-0. I mean, they really don't have a signature win. I mean, they beat Notre Dame in Week 1, which, I mean, Notre Dame at the time was ranked 5th in the nation, but turns out Notre Dame isn't a very good football team this season. But Ohio State really like this football team, complete on both sides of the ball. So we'll definitely find out more about Ohio State as they start to play some tougher opponents. I mean, they got Michigan State on the road this upcoming weekend, which turns out Michigan State is looking to be a big disappointment this season. I mean, they are 2-3 right now and looking like one of the worst teams in the Big Ten East. I mean, down the road, of course, they play Penn State on the road and, of course, Michigan in a couple of months from now towards the end of the regular season. But nonetheless, Ohio State, I got them at number 1 this week. Alabama's number 2. They beat Arkansas 49-26, which was an extremely impressive win. Honestly, Alabama was outstanding from start to finish in that game, dominating Arkansas. And quite honestly, Alabama, I really considered having them at number 1, but the main reason why I didn't put them at number 1 and kept Ohio State at 1 is because of Bryce Young. Of course, Bryce Young got injured in the matchup against Arkansas. We don't know too much about it yet, about his injury. We know it's a shoulder injury, and Nick Saban has said it's nothing major. So hopefully that's the case and that Bryce Young is able to return as soon as possible. But for now, just because of that injury, I mean, Bryce Young is the Heisman winning quarterback from last season, and he is definitely one of the best players in the country and potentially the best quarterback in the country. So Alabama not having him could have a major effect on that team, but until we find out more about that, I will keep Alabama at number 2. But it's a very slight edge that Ohio State has on Alabama right now in my rankings. Georgia's number 3. They beat Missouri 26-22. That was a very close game for a long time. It looked like Georgia there was a point in that game where, Missouri led by 10, I think, in the early parts of the fourth quarter, and it was starting to become a real possibility that Georgia was going to lose on the road to a Missouri team that is not very good. And turns out in the end, Georgia got the win. But that's the second straight week that Georgia just hasn't looked very good. I mean, they played Kent State a couple weeks ago. That game was closer than expected, even though Georgia, there wasn't a point where in that game we thought Kent State would beat Georgia, but there definitely was in the Missouri game. But nonetheless, Georgia's still undefeated, 5-0. That's a really good football team, but they got to play better if they want to be a true national contender once again. Number 4 is going to be Michigan. They beat Iowa 27-14. Definitely a solid win for Michigan. They were dominant in that game for a long time. Iowa kind of snuck back into it later on, but in the end, Michigan still got the win. And really, it wasn't. Michigan was in control for pretty much that entire game. Once again, Iowa kind of crept back in a little later on, but still, Michigan got the win by 13. They're 5-0, and I'd say pretty much the solid number 4 team in the country right now. And quite honestly, the gap is starting to close between Michigan and the top 3 there. I think Georgia, the way they've played the past couple of weeks, Michigan isn't far off. But Georgia does have to play, once again, a lot better, and we're going to find out whether Georgia is for real or not in the coming weeks, as they've got Florida down the road. They got Tennessee, of course, in early November. So, it's going to be a few weeks until we really see Georgia play some good opponents. But nonetheless, Bulldogs are still a team that there is no doubt one of the top teams in the country. Clemson, number 5. They beat NC State 30-20. Really good win for Clemson there. NC State is a talented football team, and Clemson was able to beat them by 10. So I'm going to move them up 2 positions up to number 5. If you've watched my rankings in the past few weeks, I have been extremely conservative on Clemson, mainly because they never really impressed me in the first 3 weeks. But coming off of 2 straight ranked wins, they beat Wake Forest on the road 51-45 and just beat NC State by 10. I do feel comfortable putting Clemson now in the top 5. USC is number 6. They beat Arizona State 42-25. Good win. It wasn't terribly. It was a dominant win in the end according to the score, but for a long time that game was closer than you'd expect, especially considering Arizona State is a team that is a mess, to say the least, right now. But USC still a win, won it by 17 points. So once again, not a bad win for USC there. They're 5-0, even though I do want to put Clemson above USC this week. So I did move USC down one. Oklahoma State, number 7, they beat Baylor 36-25. Impressive win there for Oklahoma State, going on the road, playing a good football team there in Baylor and getting the win. And obviously a huge redemption game for Oklahoma State there. Of course, I'm sure they had that chip on their shoulder from the Big 12 title game last season when Baylor beat them literally by inches and kept them out of the college football playoff and winning a Big 12 title. And Oklahoma State, they were solid in that game start to finish. Really great win for Oklahoma State. Both sides of the ball looked great. Oklahoma State is a team to keep an eye on. They're a sneaky team in the national picture right now. So keep an eye on Oklahoma State moving forward. They're undefeated and 4-0. Moving on to 8 through 14, we got Tennessee number 8. They did not play this past weekend, but to make room for Clemson and Oklahoma State, I did move Tennessee down a couple of positions, but there's no doubt they're still a top 8 team. Utah's number 9. They beat Oregon State 42-16. Really impressive win. I've kept Utah in the top 10 for the past couple of weeks, even though they're a one-loss team. They're not undefeated. Of course, they lost to Florida back in week 1, but I still think Utah is an outstanding really an outstanding team that has got tremendous potential. And so I got them at number 9. That's a bit higher than others would have Utah right now. But I think, the way they play against Oregon State is not a bad team. And Utah dominated them, quite honestly. And so that's, a really good win for them. And Utah's looked really good ever since losing to Florida. So keep an eye on the Utes. You can't count them out. Not for a second right now, as there is still a lot of football to be played in this season. And Utah and USC play in a couple of weeks. That is a matchup to really be looking forward to. Ole Miss is number 10. They beat Kentucky. Huge win for the Rebels there, 22-19, moving up 8 positions after that win. They're 5-0. And Ole Miss is a team now to keep an eye on. Of course, Kentucky's been kind of in that position in the top 10 for a couple of weeks, but Ole Miss with a huge win there. That puts the Rebels potentially in a position to be a dark horse contender. Penn State, number 11, they beat Northwestern 17-7. Kind of a obviously a defensive game, but kind of a sloppy game there. But Penn State still got the win in the end. They're 5-0, and they've, of course, got Michigan coming up here in a couple of weeks. They got a bye for week 6, and then week 7 they got Michigan on the road, which is going to be a huge matchup for both those teams there in determining who's going to continue to be a big contender in the Big Ten East. So Penn State is that to look forward to. They're 5-0. I got them at number 11 this week. Oregon is number 12. They beat Stanford 45-27, moving up 7 positions after that win. And of course, usually I wouldn't move Oregon up or a team up for a win like that. It was still a dominant win over Stanford, but 7 positions seems like a lot. But it's a lot until you realize how many teams in the top 25 lost this past week, and especially in the 12 to 25 range. There were a lot of teams that lost this past week, and it was a pretty chaotic week for several reasons. We saw a few major upsets. We saw, once again, when you also have multiple ranked matchups, you're going to see obviously some ranked teams lose. And so, but nonetheless, Oregon moving up 7 positions because of that win. They're 4-1, and Oregon still got to keep an eye on them as they're one of the top teams in the Pac-12. Kentucky lost to Ole Miss 19-22. I still think Kentucky is a really good team. Will Levis is an outstanding quarterback. Both sides of the ball, they are strong. So I'm not going to move them down too far. I'll move them down to 13, 3 positions off of last week as they're 4-1. And NC State, I'm actually keeping them at the same position that they were last week for me. I had them at 14 last week. They lost to Clemson 20-30, 4-1. But I was actually pretty impressed by NC State's performance there. They, for a long time, they had the lead for a while there. And NC State was, overall, they looked really good in that matchup, I thought. So NC State, I still think they're worthy of being in the top 15. The AP poll also has them at 14, even though the AP poll had them at 10 going into week 5. So the AP poll has them dropping. I'm going to keep them at 14 just because I still think NC State is a team to keep an eye on. They're still a really talented, really good team in the ACC. Moving on to 15 through 21, we got Wake Forest at 15. They beat Florida State 31-21. And Wake Forest, still a team to keep an eye on as well. They're entering back into the rankings this week. I've kept Wake Forest in my first 5 out the past couple of weeks just because I haven't been too too sure of them. Of course, they had that really close game to Liberty, which wasn't, I mean, it was a win, but it wasn't impressive. And of course, they lost to Clemson then the next week, even though it wasn't a terrible loss. And then beating Florida State, a ranked team who was undefeated at the time. Good win for Wake Forest. I'll put them at 15 this week. And there's Kansas. Kansas is number 16 for me this week. They beat Iowa State 14-11. Who would have seen this coming? Kansas 5-0, still undefeated. One of the only remaining undefeated teams in the nation. I mean, wow, what a season for Kansas this has been. And you got to give major credit to Lance Leipold and what he's done with Kansas this season. And I mean, that offense, I mean, this is a talented Kansas team that really, I mean, I feel like Kansas is for real. This is a team that could very much be a contender in the Big 12. Of course, Jalen Daniels is a really talented quarterback. Offensively, they've been strong. Only 14 points against Iowa State, but their defense really showed up and had a great game. So Kansas, number 16, moving up 7 positions after that win. And yeah, keep an eye on the Jayhawks, that's for sure. 17 is TCU. This was a game that I didn't see coming. They beat Oklahoma 55-24. And OU has fallen flat the past couple of weeks. I mean, K-State, they put up a fight, but they just fell flat from the start against TCU. And TCU is another team to keep an eye on. They're playing Kansas this upcoming weekend, and suddenly that is one of the biggest games coming up here in Week 6. So, I mean, yeah, once again, no one would have seen that coming. I mean, TCU and Kansas, 2 teams in the Big 12 that were, in general, projected to be 2 of the bottom 3 teams in the conference this season. So, a pretty insane and unexpected big matchup there coming up here. UCLA, number 18, they beat Washington 40-32. And quite honestly, they were dominant in that game, even though the score makes it seem like it was close. So really good win for UCLA there. Moving into the rankings this week at 18, they're 5-0, still undefeated. UCLA quietly one of the best teams in the Pac-12 right now. Kansas State, number 19, they beat Texas Tech 37-28. Really like K-State. They're 4-1. Of course, they lost to Tulane a couple of weeks ago, which is keeping them from being any higher, or at least above Kansas, TCU, etc. But yeah, K-State is a team that really has come around the past couple of weeks. They beat Oklahoma back in Week 4, which was an extremely impressive win. And Adrian Martinez is coming around. He's looking really good right now. K-State is a team not to be sleeping on. BYU's number 20. They beat Utah State 38-26. I mean, decent win for BYU. Nothing too impressive. They're 4-1. I'm going to keep them at 20 this week. And, I mean, BYU is a team that I've really liked. I really liked this past offseason. I really liked the beginning parts of this season as well. I actually had BYU ranked number 8 in the nation at one point. I can't remember if that was week 2 or 3. But BYU is a team that, I mean, the past couple of weeks they've gotten wins, but they just haven't been terribly impressive. So we'll see how BYU responds. And I mean, that's still a team that's tremendously talented. They got a lot of potential, but the past couple of weeks they just haven't been terribly impressive. Syracuse, number 21. Keep an eye on Syracuse. They're 5-0, and that's a team that I think a lot of people are sleeping on in the ACC. They've been really good so far this season, and being 5-0. I mean, they beat Purdue, of course, a couple of weeks ago. Beat Virginia, just beat Wagner 59-0. So yeah, Syracuse moving up 3 this week into number 21. And now for 22 through 25, we got Mississippi State at 22. They beat Texas A&M 42-24. It was a dominant win for Mississippi State there. And Texas A&M, what a roller coaster of a season it's been so far for the Aggies. They lose to App State a few weeks ago in a stunning loss, and then they come back. They beat Miami, a ranked opponent at the time. Then they beat Arkansas, also a team who was ranked. And then they play Mississippi State, and then they just lose 42-24. So it's been a roller coaster for Texas A&M to say the least. But Mississippi State, really good win for them, and suddenly they're up to 4-1. So keep an eye on the Bulldogs. Washington State, number 23, and this team is 4-1. They beat Cal 28-9. And I'm sure not many rankings have Washington State in there, considering they just lost a couple of weeks ago to Oregon. But, I mean, in that Oregon game, Washington State was actually, it looked like they should have won that game, quite honestly. And, I mean, they blew it at the very end, and in the end, it is a loss. But Washington State so far this season, I have been impressed by. And so I do think they're deserving, especially after a chaotic Week 5 where so many teams in the top 25 lost. I'll give Washington State a chance in the top 25, and I mean, they looked pretty good this season. Beat Wisconsin back in Week 2. Dominant against Colorado State. Once again, lost to Oregon by 3 in a game they should have won. And, of course, just beat Cal this past weekend. So I'll give the Cougars the number 23 position. Minnesota, number 24. What a disappointing loss they had to Purdue. I had Minnesota at 13, which, looking back, that did not age very well. I had Minnesota pretty high, but I was super confident in Minnesota. After their win against Michigan State, I think everyone thought Minnesota was for real. But you got to keep in mind, though, too, Minnesota did not have Mohamed Ibrahim in that matchup against Purdue this past weekend. He was injured and he was out. He is a crucial part to this Minnesota team. Even last season, Minnesota they didn't have him for the entire season, but I mean, if they would have, I feel like Minnesota would have been a big contender last year. Kind of the same story for this year. When they have Ibrahim, this is a really good football team because they got the backfield, they got a decent offense otherwise. Defensively, they've been promising. I mean, even in this matchup, they weren't bad on defense. They just couldn't get anything going on offense. And so for Minnesota, losing that matchup, I'm still going to keep them in the top 25. But, I mean, once again, it's going to heavily depend on Ibrahim. If he can get back soon, that's going to be huge for Minnesota because the Gophers are very much a contender and a team that I could easily see winning the Big Ten West if that's the case. I mean, if you look at their first 4 games, they were so dominant in each of those games. So for them to come into that Purdue game and lose by 10 was extremely disappointing, but I still feel like Minnesota has a chance to be your Big Ten West champion. But once again, going to heavily depend on Ibrahim. 25 is Maryland. They beat Michigan State 27-13. Really like the Terps right now. They're 4-1 and not having a bad season so far. So keep an eye on Maryland as they could be one of the surprise teams in the Big Ten this season, as they've been, once again, not too bad so far at 4-1. First 5 out, Baylor is number 26. I considered ranking Baylor, but a 2-loss team. I kind of wanted to put some 1-loss teams over Baylor. Washington is 27. Extremely disappointing loss to UCLA this past weekend. Texas A&M, of course, is a 2-loss team coming off of a very disappointing loss to Mississippi State. LSU 29 and Oklahoma 30. LSU, I consider putting Florida State in that position because Florida State did beat LSU back in week 1, but now week 1 was a few weeks ago and a lot of things have happened, and LSU is actually looking pretty good right now. And then Oklahoma's number 30, and quite honestly, Oklahoma's just fallen flat the past couple of weeks. OU, I mean, Dylan Gabriel, of course, got injured in that matchup against TCU as well, so hopefully he can get back soon for the Sooners. I still feel like they still have a chance in the Big 12, but obviously now losing 2 conference games there, it's going to be a tough road for Oklahoma if they want to be at least maybe a New Year's Six team now. But I still think OU's got the talent to maybe make a run for it. But dropped out. We had 6 teams drop out from last week's rankings. Oklahoma was number 12. Baylor was 15. Texas A&M 16. Washington was 17. Arkansas 21 and Florida State 22. So once again, chaotic week of action that we saw in week 5. But that's it. That's going to wrap it up for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on these rankings, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.